All right. Evening, everyone. Please be seated. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Here in Texas, we're getting a little bit of that rain from the storms that are going across different parts of the world. So it's a very much appreciated. Let's see here. We're going to be continuing in the respect unit. The respect unit, unit number 4 in the intermediate series. And we are possibly we might be able to, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Finish this up because we're going to be our next one that's coming up. Drum roll, please. No drum roll, guys. Is the responsibility unit. I know we're all excited for that. It's going to teach us how to put all these things that we've learned into a proper perspective and help us to become responsible citizens of society in general. All right. So this is Respect Unit number 4, Chapter 7, Respecting the Environment. And we're just going to pick up this class where David left off last class. He was talking about some of the things here with animal cruelty and getting to the heart of the matter and so forth. I think he left off on page 195. But we see here, the importance of why we need to work on developing a positive character. And everything, and I say this every time, maybe not every time, but almost every time I get up here and have the opportunity to teach you, is that remember everything that we've learned from the very beginning of this. If you come in at the very beginning, in the introduction and the character unit and so forth, or you just came in a few classes ago, what you've been receiving are the building blocks that is necessary for helping to build a positive character. Now, the foundation was laid all the way back at the beginning, right? We're shaping our character, so it's important for your students to know and understand, well, what is character? How does it relate to me? How does my character affect myself, those who are in my environment, my family, my friends, my schoolmates, and so forth? How does my character, as we're learning here, because we're talking about the positive character trait of respect, how does it affect the environment, right? A lot of people don't think that the things that they do affect the environment and affect it or impact it in a negative way. I was trying to get a video, and I know we played it before, but I know it's in your mind. I know it's there, and you can actually go back and look at some of the previous classes we had in regards to when we were covering the early parts of this lesson in Chapter 7 on the effects of pollution in the water, the plastics, the land, the toxic chemicals spilled on the land, the overuse of the land, how pollution affects the air that we breathe, and so forth. So, these are the things that we're kind of covering and wrapping up this evening as we're going to be going through this this last chapter here. And let's take a look-see back to our gray tabs, which is our our procedures, and we're almost done with these. So let's look at lesson plan 7, page E, and we're actually going to be looking at procedures 9 and 10 because we're just about out of it. 195 is where we're going to be picking up. We're going to back up just a tiny bit. 195 is where we're going to be picking up, and then we'll be getting into the rest of the brainstorming and what I have learned, hopefully, toward the end. But we'll look at the procedure 9 here on lesson plan 7, page E, just to refresh our memory. Now, David covered these things the last class and explained to students that human beings are the dominant and most intelligent species on our planet. Now, it might be, a question on that, as far as the most intelligent species on the planet. But when you think about it, and we'll get into some of that a little bit later in regards to what it means to be intelligent. Now, if you look at society now, the big rave is the AI, artificial intelligence. And, this has kind of been a fear for mankind for quite a while. that they would make artificial intelligence programs or computers that eventually will become sentient, you know, and eventually become smarter than mankind and take over the world, right? I don't know if we'll get to that point, because a computer can only be as smart as what's put in it, and mankind has not done an awesome job in, you know, managing things so far. It's funny because even in those scenarios in those movies, it always ends in some type of destruction, you know, either nuclear destruction or wars, or the computers figure out that they have to eliminate man because mankind would destroy the earth. So let's eliminate mankind, right? But all those things end in violence. It ends in war. So you can see the characteristic of what's placed into these programs, because what goes into them, even today, what's gone into them is a result of what's been fed into the minds of the programmers and so forth. So you can't escape those things by just creating an artificial intelligence. You know, mankind has enough intelligence on his own. There's a few things that he's lacking that will help him to get a little bit further in life so that he can make better choices. But that's what you are learning here right now, those missing, as they like to call it, missing link, missing links, the missing piece of the puzzle, missing piece of the pie, or whatever, to help mankind go beyond this technical knowledge to knowledge that will enable him to be a benefit to himself, others, and the environment. Right now, it's problems arise because of businesses or a way to profiteering. Things are passed, and lobbyists are what they call it. They lobby the governmental leaders, the political leaders, and so forth to get certain things passed in laws so that, you know, corporations don't have to do certain things, or they are allowed to do certain things, right? But many years later, they start to see effects of the passing of those laws, and in a lot of cases, it impacts society or the environment in a harmful way. We talked a little bit about the burying of the toxic waste in the water, you know, and they bury these things in water saying, well, the salt water will kind of dilute it and so forth, and it won't be, you know, that bad for mankind. By the time these things rot, oh, we'll be long gone. But what about the generations that follow? Because as we talked about in the previous classes, that iron, that steel, it doesn't last for very long. It doesn't last forever underneath the ocean. And William showed a picture in his class about a Black Sea. I think it was the Black Sea, and then he showed where the Titanic had actually crashed. Not crashed. Well, it did crash into something, but then it sunk afterwards, right? And you can see the difference between those two bodies of water where there is no life and where there is life. And the purpose of that life, as we talked about in this class, in this section of the book, chapter 7, is to help mankind to be able to have everything that he needs without the consequences, right? The consequences that come not because of life on Earth, not because of the animals, not because of the insects, as we talked about before. That doesn't take place, right? The animals, the insects, the air, the water, it can't create these toxic environments. There has to be some outside influence that brings it about. And most scientists that are worth their weight in salt, and many of them have come out with different reports and so forth, and have pleaded with the global community and said, you know, we need to start making changes. We need to change the way we conduct business, the way we dispose of chemicals, the production of the chemicals, how we deal with things. Otherwise, we're going to completely deplete our resources. We're going to poison them. Not necessarily doesn't mean they're going to be gone, but they're going to be unusable, right? You can have 55 gallons of water, and it could be one toxic substance in that water that will make it unusable for you. So the depletion of the resources does not necessarily mean the resources themselves are gone, but they might as well be, because you can't use it. All right. And so this is what we're looking at as we go and continue in this chapter here, respecting the environment, Unit 4 of the Peaceful Solution. So back to procedure number 9 here. It says, because of this, being humans being the dominant, most intelligent species on the planet, we have a responsibility to respect our resources and our environment to ensure the survival of all living things. Have students turn to pages 192 through 194, and of course, David would have covered portions of these last class, in their handbooks, and read the section, quote, "It's not just about us," and "Getting to the heart of the matter." Have students complete the exercise found on page 195 of their handbooks and stress that they can, through education, motivate others to respect the environment. Now, remember what the key word here is: through education, right? Education is the key. And even as we talked about, value and appreciate. Having value in your mind and appreciating the resources of, appreciating our resources, the resources that help us to survive. One of the ways that you can build that value in your mind is to educate yourself about it. Educate yourself about the things in your environment. Why are they there? Why does stinging nettles sting? Have you ever run into a stinging nettle plant? You ever run into one with your flip-flops on, right? It don't feel too great. Why is it? It was interesting. I was listening to it was a woman who she had contracted a disease, and this was one of those medical mystery things. She had contracted a disease, and she had lived with it for 15 odd years. Everything had gone to pot. Her family was broken up. Her husband didn't, stay with her anymore. She got divorced. She was debilitated, almost pretty much kind of bedridden. So she had moved to another state to kind of live out her last few months or years on the earth, because she was tired of the struggle and she was tired of fighting this particular disease. And it's kind of a common disease. It's not something that's out there. It was Lyme disease. And one evening one day she had went out with her caretaker to go for a walk, and she took note of how beautiful everything was, the beautiful sun and the warm breeze across her skin, and, the air smelled fresh, the birds were singing and so forth. And, she took note of how beautiful it was, but it didn't really change her mind about the fact that she accepted basically that she was going to die. And during that walk, she noticed a bug flying around her head. So of course she went to swat the bug away. Well, the bug became a little bit more aggressive, and her caretaker actually took off running because a swarm of bees had actually gathered around this woman and started stinging her. Now, not only was it just a swarm of bees, these were the Africanized killer bees, right? The Africanized killer bees. Now, these guys get a pretty bad rap, okay? Not only did the lady have Lyme disease, but she also was allergic to bees. So she thought, oh boy, forget about the peaceful, going out peacefully. I'm about to die in the middle of it, the street with everybody looking at me in pain and agony. Well, she ended up going back to her home and was kind of bedridden for 3 days. But what occurred was things started to turn around for her. Come to find out that scientists were actually using the venom of bees to eradicate certain diseases, to take away certain diseases. Now, what caused all those bees to come and start, stinging her? I have no idea. But, as far as I know, she's still alive to this day and enjoying life. So everything has a purpose, right? And we might not always know what the purpose of that, or know bits and pieces of the purposes of insects or animals, or, microorganisms or parasites, even parasites, right? Parasites have a beneficial purpose when they're kept within their proper environment. William and many of us have talked in previous classes, Chris and David and myself, about just the parasite that's in the pig, right? The trichinosis worm, or the trichina. It has a very beneficial purpose to the pig. Now, that worm doesn't belong in us, right? But sometimes people do things and they get inside the person. And there's been a lot of cases recently in the news where people have doctors have actually pulled out like egg sacs out of people's brains. It was causing them problems. They were having neurological malfunctions. They weren't thinking. They were, tripping over things, slurring their words. People thought they were having a stroke, but certain CT scans and so forth realized there was a growth. They thought it was a tumor. They went in to biopsy, removed the tumor, only to find out that it was an egg sac of a trichina worm that made it all the way to their brain. Okay. Now I don't know if the influence of that worm might make you want to go back and eat more of the thing that caused it to be there to begin with. Kind of like the parasite that it gets into a grasshopper or something like that, makes it climb to the top of a blade of grass, and it kind of has a cycle that it goes through over and over and over and over again. Well, all those things have a purpose, and we might not always see the benefit, but that's why we teach in the Peaceful Solution. Education is a key. Knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the better you are able to make a sound, a conscious, a rational, and as we're going to get into here, reasonable choice, right? A reasonable choice. All right, so let's look here. Did I finish reading that? Stress that they can, through education, motivate others to respect the environment. All right, so let's go back to page 195, and let's look back a little bit here to 194 before we move forward, just to kind of back up, and then we don't just throw into this brainstorm section here. So 194, let's just look at the very top of the page. It says, with knowledge and a positive character, which includes traits such as respect, responsibility, compassion, and determination, you can begin to make a difference by respecting the environment and its resources. Don't just stop there. Educate and encourage others to do the same, for just as you have learned about the value of respect, others can too. And this is the more you grow in the Peaceful Solution, the more you will see the potential in others. Because your mindset, it shifts. Your focal point, it kind of shifts. People use the word lens, how you look through or look at things, right? It kind of shifts, and you start to see that everybody has value. Society likes to think that certain people have value. Well, this person because they're from this family, or they're from this country, or they're in this economic class, or whatever the case might be. But the fact is, everybody has value. So as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution, this is something as teachers you need to keep in mind. Realize that all your students have value. And even if one comes into your class and they're, kind of like the worst of the worst of the worst, that they've got a brain, right? They can learn. They have a heart, which means they have emotions. There are things that affect them. So now your job is just to connect that knowledge with them in a way that they can receive it, value it, and start to practice. Now that's kind of challenging for teachers, right? Because you're dealing with many personalities, many characters, many backgrounds, many environments, many influences that a child or a person has had throughout their life, and you've got to break through those barriers that can prevent a person from learning to develop, or seeing why it's important to develop a positive character, but just sticking with what's in the book will help you get there. Now you've got to add a little bit of sugar and spice to it every now and then through your personality, because everybody's different. So we look at ways that we can connect with people on their level, so to speak. And that comes with knowing your audience. So it says, keep in mind that educating others about our environment must be more than teaching them to pick up the trash from the ground, recycle containers, or conserve water. Although these are excellent ways to address the problems of pollution and overuse of our resources by themselves, these interventions will not be enough to change the direction in which our planet is going. You see, any form of disrespect, whether it is directed towards others or the environment, is a problem. Now notice here, that begins in the mind. It begins in the mind. Now, if you will keep that in mind and go all the way back to what we've learned here in the very first unit of the Peaceful Solution, the character unit, and on page 4, I think it is. Yes, 4. We see here the factors, the factors on page 4 of the character unit that help to make up our character. And genetics is one of those things. Family values are one of those things. Influences, experiences, choices, and the environment. Well, all of those things are influential in the development of that person's character. And certain things get locked in the mind, and that becomes the way that they look at society around them. How much self-esteem or self-respect or self-confidence they have is another factor. If a person grew up in an abusive home where they were taught that their value was little, they weren't worth anything. People have heard the statements, I wish you were never born, or whatever the case might be. Think of a child in that environment, how little self-respect they actually have because they've been taught, well, they're not worth much, right? So they're going to be the ones who are going to be more subject to risk-taking behaviors that affect themselves and the environment. So, we have to use these lessons to reach out to them to help them to change their mind, as we know is the goal of the peaceful solution, to change the heart and the mind. In other words, the way people think and what they are influenced by, combined, notice, with a lack of concern, can lead to disrespect. Therefore, when you educate others about respect, be knowledgeable and prepare to explain. Now, these are the keys, the tips that you want to be able to explain, which is one, why is respect, or the full meaning of respect? The full meaning of respect. Point number 2, why respect is important. And point number 3, how individuals, society, and the environment suffer when respect is lacking. All right. And then look at the last paragraph there. It says, knowing the facts will help people to make positive choices about how to respect and care for themselves. Knowing the fact. Help. Knowing the facts will help people make positive choices. It won't make people make positive choices. Many people know facts regarding the laws of the land, right? Like stealing is wrong, killing is wrong. Those things are wrong. But people don't always follow those rules. So knowing is a part of it. But this is why they have to be educated, because at least you give them a portion of the tools that are needed in order to accomplish the goal. But they have to have the determination and the desire within to put these values or these concepts into practice, a practical knowledge or practical application of the lessons learned. Making a difference by educating others can be as simple as explaining to your parents why using pesticides on the lawn contaminate the drinking water and so forth. All right, so let's look on page 195 here, because this section here is an opportunity for you as a teacher to kind of allow your students to stretch their mind, so to speak, right? To get a little bit of creativity out of them, and it gives you a tool to measure if they're grasping the concepts. These enrichment activities are there to help drive the points home, to put them in a perspective that the student can understand and see how to apply what they've learned in an everyday situation. All right, it says, use the lines below to brainstorm other ways you can educate others about our environment and make a difference in the world around you. And many people have done this over the years. Many people have set out to make people aware of different problems affecting our society. Now, some people have kind of allowed the pendulum to swing a little bit too far to the other, and you see, if we get into it in this lesson, we might get into it in this lesson this evening about activism or being an activist, right? And activists kind of get a bad name because they're usually the people that'll tie themselves to trees or get in front of vehicles and block traffic and highways and so forth, and it interferes with the lives of other people, right? Kind of reminds me of like some of the things that people like at the Peaceful Solution mentions, Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, peaceful demonstrations, peaceful protests. Let's not interrupt the lives of others, but let's make our point in a peaceful way, so that people can understand what we're advocating for. That's another word there, advocating. So it says here, answers will vary, but might include write your congressman about your concerns. So these are some ways that we can educate others about our environment. You can write your congressman, you can write your mayor, you can write your governor, you can write. They have council people. They have, what do they call those other ones? Ombudsmen or something like that. They've got all different types of office holders who can make decisions within a community that they might not be aware of how a particular action by a company or a corporation or the use of certain pesticides or actions that the community takes, and possibly something like spraying herbicides along the side of the roads or spraying for mosquitoes, how that might affect the environment around them. They just do it because that's what we've done. That's what we've done for 50 years, and it seemed to work. Well, things can change. People can change. Our minds can change. Our characters can change. And so sometimes education is kind of all that's needed. A little bit more of a push could be in sometimes, but education at least is the start. It says, find out how pollution as well as conserving our resources are being handled on a political level. Find out if your local television station or television or radio station has free public announcements. And a lot of times they'll reserve certain spaces for, maybe nonprofit organizations, people from schools and so forth, to have spots on the television or radio. You can make a public announcement and have that aired. Find out if your local newspaper will do free advertisements. If they say no initially, well, don't give up. Explain that you want to make a difference in the environment, and you can have a poster contest. You could have different types of things being done to create awareness. And a lot of times that's when people have events. It's being done to create awareness about a problem that needs to be resolved. Let's see here. Okay, have a poster contest. Yes. In this way, you can educate your community about respecting the environment as well. Now, you see what it says there. It's coming from the student. This is kind of pushing the student to become active, in their community, in pushing for respectful actions or activities regarding the environment, right? The reduction of or elimination of toxic chemicals and whatever it might be. But see what's taking place in your own community. Encourage them to kind of make themselves aware of what's taking, because what might be taking place in one community might not be taking place in another. One might be the city, one might be the country. I know that there's been some places that I've been that the drinking water has been greatly affected because all around that area it's mostly farmland. And so, of course, farmers, they use a lot of amounts of pesticides, at least in that area they did. And those things eventually they do leach into the groundwater. They do get into the surface water, and then people have to drink these things. And it affects the taste, it affects the smell, it affects the chemical composition of the water and so forth, making it where it's virtually impossible to drink without a $5,000 reverse osmosis, UV light water filtration system on your house. But you really shouldn't need all those things. The way that our environment is designed to clean itself. Water goes through a natural cleaning process, and as long as it's not the microorganisms that are used to clean those things aren't sick themselves, they do a pretty great job. You think about it, we've been drinking the same water, don't want to gross you out, the same water that everybody else has been drinking for thousands of years, right? But the environment, the ecosystem, it's able to clean the bad things out of it. Of course, it's getting harder nowadays to do so because there's so many bad things that are in the drinking water, in the land, and so forth, in the air. The forever chemicals is a real big thing right now. PFAS, right? These chemicals that are created that they say they last forever, but they virtually take forever to break down if they do at all. And they get in the water, they get in the air. We actually breathing some of these components. They're used on certain types of cookware, right? And when you put your food in there and you're scraping those pots, that's getting into your food that you're eating, and sometimes water you're drinking. Look at the bottom box there on page 195. It says, if you make no effort towards positive change, change might never occur. So, you can have your students actually highlight this, because this this kind of, for a lack of better words, it puts the ball in their court. Remember what we talked about earlier. We can't leave our society and our characters up to someone else. We have to take the initiative. We have to put forth the effort to bring about the change. Be the change you want to be or want to see. If you wait for others to make a change, change might never occur. I've seen that before, not necessarily dealing with the environment, but just dealing with people in general. They're always waiting for the next person to make the move. Are you going to do something? You gonna do something? Okay, no, you're not going to? Okay, well, I'll just wait. Once somebody goes, then I'll go, right? Nobody's going? All right, well, I guess we won't do anything. You know? It's like sometimes people are afraid to go out and initiate something. I'm not talking about something that's risk-taking and dangerous, but sometimes people are just afraid to go out and do something new. They're afraid to kind of get out of their comfort zone, get out of their bubble. Well, pushing for positive character education, you kind of have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to kind of get out of your bubble. You have to be ready to be told no, or, well, we like the program, but, it's, we've got other things. We got a lot on our plates, or whatever the case might be. People have all types of excuses. But we can't wait for someone else to make the first move. As teachers of the peaceful solution, we're learning about being role models and the fact that, we have to be initiators of this. Our students are actually going to be looking to us to demonstrate these activities, the lessons that we're learning, right? It says, if you wait for others to make a change, change might never occur. The only way to ensure that things will change for the better is if you set your mind in advance. Set your mind in advance. Why is it important to set your mind in advance? That way you're not taken off guard when something unexpected occurs. Now, granted, you can't predict or foresee every possible scenario that might take place in your life, but you can rest assured in the fact that knowing the lessons you've been taught in the peaceful solution, self-control, respect, acceptance, the difference between positive and negative influence, understanding what your character is, how to maintain a positive character, understanding and recognizing the barriers to maintaining a positive character, all these things that are in your mind, you can set your mind in advance to make sure that you don't think or feel, remember allowing those emotions to get to a negative spot, or even if they do get to that point, act in a way that's going to have a negative effect on yourself, others, or the environment, right? Practicing self-control. Let's see here. The only way to ensure that things will change for the better is if you set your mind in advance and make the effort to make positive changes to the best of your ability. And that's what we encourage our students. Don't be discouraged. You're going to make mistakes. Like I believe David said, you're probably going to make some bad choices from time to time. But set your mind to do the best you can. You get up, you dust yourself off, you learn from the experience, and then you find what you did wrong, find what the solution is, to do the opposite behavior, and then set your mind in advance to practice that so you don't fall back in that same trap. It might be a mistake once, but don't let it keep occurring because it's not a mistake after that. Now, on page 196 here, we have this. This will be one of the supplements that you would use in your class. You can take the CD or the MP3 of this song here, and you can play it to your students. It's a pretty great song. I meant to get it together for the class so we could hear it, but in your own spare time, you can go back and listen to that song entitled Imagine. What it is it encompasses what we've talked about in this lesson about respecting the environment, okay? So let's look over to page 197, and we see another activity here. Let's go back to our lesson plan. Hold your page on 197 there, because this brings us into procedure 10, I believe. Yes. Look back to lesson plan 7, page E. So it says activity here. This is what you would do in your class. Play the song Imagine on the teacher's manual audio lesson CD while students follow along on page 196. Divide students into groups, now this is after the song, and have them brainstorm answers to the exercise, Imagine What the World Would Be, on page 197 in their handbooks. Have each group designate a spokesperson to share the group's answers in the with the rest of the class. Emphasize that the choices we make in regard to how we respect ourselves, others, and the environment will determine our character, our future, and the future of our planet. So the key word there is the choices that we make. All right, so let's look back to page 197 there. And let's see. At the very top it says, imagine what the world would be. Can you imagine a world where everyone's goal was to develop a positive moral character? Now that might be kind of hard for your students to imagine, to picture right now. The majority of what you see in society, on television, on the radios, movies, video games, the social media platforms, there's a lot of negativity there. The majority of it is negative in one way, shape, or form. Especially the more you learn about peace, the peaceful solution, the more you learned about influences, the more you learn about how these images, they affect the way you think, feel, and act, right? The more prominent they become. And you see, wow, it's a lot of bad things in society right now. And the more your students learn this, they're going to see it more. But when we value what we're learning, we're able to eliminate the negative and focus mostly on the positive. So it says, can you imagine everyone having respect for themselves, each other, and the environment? How would our society and environment be different if everyone demonstrated respect? So that's the question that's posed to the students as they brainstorm and go through these scenarios here, giving answers to their question. So it says here, read the following questions and write your answers in the lines provided. Now, this is, of course, where you've broken your students up in groups, and they'll pick a spokesperson to give the answer on behalf of the rest of the group based on the question that they received. So here's question number 1. How would society be affected if everyone had self-respect? Right? So we're talking about self-respect here. And so some of the answers might vary, but could include self-respect is what enables people to make positive choices in regard to themselves. Having this positive character trait would eliminate risk-taking behaviors, premarital sex, STDs, unwanted pregnancies, and abortion would no longer be a part of our society. The abuse of alcohol and drugs would also be eliminated. Now, that's just from one aspect of self-respect, right? Self-respect, if everyone in society actually had it. Let's see here, if I've got this one portion here. Do I have, let's see. I'm thinking I might not have printed it. Yeah, I didn't. That's okay. Let's look to number 2 there. How would society be affected if everyone had respect for others? Well, answers might vary, but include racism and all forms of crime would cease to exist. People would have concern for others. People would stop living in fear and trust each other. Children would go to school to learn without fear of being teased, harmed, or abused. People would no longer be verbally, sexually, or physically abused, right? Because they have this form of respect for others, because these things are the things that affect other people. Now, they affect the person, the perpetrator as well. They just don't see it, right? How it's affecting their mind and how they actually devalue the lives of others when they engage in these types of activities. And then number 3 there, it says, how would our planet and its resources be affected if everyone respected our environment? And it says answers will vary, but could include people would realize that all life is connected, and if we abuse our resources, all life will suffer. People would stop and think about the choices they make in regard to how they live their daily lives. Contamination of our resources would be greatly reduced. Overuse and misuse of our resources would cease. Everyone would have clean air to breathe. Fresh water would be available for all, as well as a healthy, abundant food supply. And that's something that I think everybody can appreciate, a healthy and abundant food supply. Even in this time period that we're in right now with everything kind of being in a depleted state, we still produce more food than we typically need. In other words, there's enough food for everybody to go around, but it's not reaching everybody, right? I remember back in, I don't know if it was the 80s or something like that, 80s or 90s, we had so much wheat, the United States did, that they were actually dumping it into the oceans to get rid of the excess amount of wheat that we had so that the prices could go up a little bit. We had too much. Now, the old people in these other countries, they didn't have too much. They didn't have an abundance. And I bet they were probably pretty disturbed when they saw or heard about, they might not have had televisions, but they heard about, a country, the superpower, the big brother, right? Just dumping this in the oceans. Now, granted, the fish were very pleased, right? The fish were very pleased for this, but the people were needing it. Okay, what does that show you? That shows a lack of respect for others, because remember what the definition of respect is. To recognize the value of people and their belongings, and to treat them with consideration, care, and concern. If there was care and concern for those people or for mankind in general, the question would have been, hey, we've got a huge abundance of wheat right now. Is there anybody that can use it? Is there any other country that we can send this to? Can we send this to organizations that maybe feed the poor or do something? I mean, anything would have been better than just, boop, dumping it in the oceans. Why? So we could jack the price up a little bit more. Okay, a supply and demand thing. I think one of the teachers, maybe William mentioned it in the previous class, one of the leaders said, I think it was Henry Kissinger, if you can control the food, you can control the people. Well, the goal is not necessarily to control, but if we had the mindset of serving, others, society would be in a much better state, because a lot of countries are frustrated because they feel that other countries are trying to come in and control them and control their resources, instead of saying, how can we help? What can we do to help? What can we do to ease the burden, right? And if we would look at things from that perspective, but you've got to have your peaceful solution glasses on for that, right? You have to be educated. You have to learn why certain things need to be done in order to change the way you think. So if you look at the very bottom box there, it says, it's time we recognize the value of respecting ourselves, family, friends, and our home, beautiful planet Earth, the peaceful solution. Beautiful planet Earth, that's right. Well, if we keep going the route that we're going right now, it won't be beautiful much longer. And that's what a lot of advocates are worried about, because they can see how things are going downhill. And some of these things are to the point of no return. I think I read in one of my classes how many species have been just lost, extinct. They've become extinct because of the activities of mankind. Not only animal species, but food species, apples, different food varieties of fruits and vegetables and nuts, seeds and legumes and things of that nature. They don't exist anymore. They're not here anymore because of the activities of mankind. So this is why it's important that we respect our environment. Let's look at page 198 here as we get into the What I Have Learned section. So this is the summary, kind of wrapping up everything that we've covered in this unit here, this chapter 7, on respecting the environment, 198 here. And we have 8 points that we're going to cover here in this class. We won't get all of them, but we'll get started. So number 1 here is an important aspect of developing a positive moral character and a respectful reputation is to have respect for all life. Now I want you to look at 2 things there and see a similarity. The third word, aspect, and the third from the right column on the second sentence, respect. You see something in common there? It's got the last 4 letters, or last 5 letters, spect in it. Spect. How we look at things, right? Let's look at, I don't have it. Let's see here. I think it is, I have the definition on aspect in there. Got a little bit twisted around in my slides there. But in the definition of aspect, it says, To look, do we have that? I'll put it on the overhead. Okay, there we go. It says to look at, towards, behold, or observe something relative to one's position. Relative to one's position. So, an important aspect of developing a positive moral character. So, you're in a position where you're lacking some things, but you're needing to improve in certain facets or areas of your life, building a positive character. So you kind of have to shift the way you look at things, right? We've grown up in society where we've seen so many negative influences coming at us over and over and over and over. Those influences come in and they affect the way we think, we feel, we act. They affect the way we see the world and the environment around us. So what we have to do is we have to shift our focal point to look at and to receive positive influences coming into our mind. Because those influences will also do the same, change the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act, and also change the way we see society around us and how we respond to things that take place in our society or that directly affect us. Or, like we learned in chapter 5, how we respond to disrespect, including disrespect for the environment. It says here, a part of something, the aspect, is also a part of something. So like in this definition here, an important aspect of developing a positive moral character. It's a part of it. It's a facet. You know, where you get that word facet, you hear it mostly in regards to things like cut stones, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, jaspers, things like that, right? They have facets. And if you take the T off of it, you see it's a face. It's the face of the diamond. It reflects a particular quality of light. I think, what is it? Cut, color, clarity. Is it 3 C's or 4 C's with diamonds? Cut, color, clarity. It might just be 3, right? And that's what diamond guys, I don't know what they're called. You know, that's what they look for when they're inspecting a diamond. And so we look at the face or aspect or a part of these character traits. All these things that we're learning, not just what we're learning here in chapter 7 or in this book alone, but everything we've learned in the previous 4 books as well, or 3 books as well, are a part of helping us develop a positive moral character and a respectful reputation. Last sentence on that word there says, the direction that something faces or points towards. So that's the definition for the word aspect. So important aspect or part of developing a positive character and a respectful reputation is to have respect for all life. And if you go back to page 173 real quick, you can refresh this in the minds of your students. And it says, if you look at third paragraph down, it says, in the previous chapters you learned that the foundation of respect, whether for yourselves, others, or the environment, is based on value and appreciation. Remember what we talked about? In order to value something and appreciate something, remember value is something, the worth of something, right? Something that's important to you. Well, you have to be educated about it. You have to learn about it, whether you're taught by somebody else or whether you go and learn for yourself. But it's based on value and appreciation. That's what the foundation of respect is placed on. You also learn that all people, whether yourself, I'm sorry, let me read that again. You also learn that all people, yourself included, have worth. Now remember, as teachers, we have to always keep these things in mind. We have to role model this and demonstrate this towards our students when frustrations arise or indifferences occur or conflicts arise within the classroom. It can be very easy to take sides or to look at someone or look down on someone just because they're different from us in whatever way it might be, okay? But as teachers, we want to realize or help our students to realize as well that everyone has worth, everyone has value, and everyone should be appreciated. Given the right environment, training, right? Given the right environment, training in moral character, and the determination to make appropriate choices, everyone can have the potential to live life to the best of their ability. Now, you got to have the combination of both these things here, as we're covering on the first point and what I have learned. An important aspect of developing a positive moral character and respectful reputation is to have respect for all life. Well, how do you have respect for all life? You got to lay that foundation first. You've got to value and appreciate all life. Well, how do you value and appreciate all life? Well, you got to get some education. You got to educate yourself. You got to learn about more than just yourself. And this is sometimes hard to break young people out of their bubble, because a lot of people, for whatever the reason might be, dysfunctional family, abuse in a relationship or something, they might become very introverted. They don't want to get outside of that bubble and realize that there's a lot out there, a lot of beneficial things, a lot to learn in life itself. But notice you've got to have the combination of these two: the right environment and training in moral character. That environment is very important. Have you ever tried to study in a loud, clamorous place, right? There's just so much taking place, or maybe not even loud, but it's like super cold or super hot or you're super uncomfortable. If your environment is not suitable, it's going to make it hard when you're in your training process. So you've got to have both things. And a lot of times people have to be pulled out of a particular environment so that they can have kind of clarity of mind to be able to receive the information that's being placed before them, and given the opportunity to put it in practice as well, right? Not to say that they're never going to be in those situations, but when they learn the peaceful solution, they're never going to put themselves in those situations. But if they ever find themselves in a situation or a circumstance where disrespect might be shown, they can respond appropriately because they've had the training. So you've got to have both these things. And this is why it's important that we as teachers, when your students come to your class, that's a part of their environment, right? You're also giving them the training, but we need to make sure we create a healthy environment in which our students can learn and grow. So given the right environment and training in moral character and the determination, now that's got to come from inside. So the environment and the training, those are external influences, teachers, parents, and so forth. The training coming from the book, a teacher teaching you the book, the parent teaching you the book, a guardian teaching you the book, going to a class or a workshop or whatever the case might be. But the determination has to come from within, right? You can't force your students to make right choices. You might be able to in the classroom, but when they get out of there, they're going to do what's in their heart to do. So we want to continue to influence them, to build them up, to help them to see the value within themselves, to help them to understand that yes, you can become a better person. You can contribute to society. You can help turn things around. Every big movement started with like one person or a small group of people, right? So never, don't try to help them come out of the mindset of I'm just one person, or I can't do this, or we're too small, or we're too young. Many young people have been very influential in movements within society as well, right? So let's see here. Everyone can have the potential to live life to the best of their ability. And at the very bottom there it says, in this final chapter, you will learn how you can apply your knowledge to show respect for the earth. You will understand that another important aspect of positive character and a respectful reputation is to have respect for all life. And that was one of the very first things that we covered all the way back in the character unit under the 3 basic categories of morality: respect for all life, plants, animals, and the environment, right? Plants, animals, and what was it? Property and possessions, right? And so just had a little brain blockage there, right there. So this is very important, and this will help you to develop a respectful reputation. Lastly, it says, you will also learn that respecting the environment means not polluting or abusing our precious resources. All right. So knowledge and self-respect, of course, that will help us to respect ourselves, others, and the environment, which when we have respect for ourselves, these other things, they become a lot easier because we understand that we're a piece of a bigger pie. Us individuals, yes, when we have respect for ourselves, we by default, to some degree, not really default, but the more we educate ourselves, which is a form of respect, the more we'll see how we affect others around us, how we affect our environment around us, how we affect the air, the land, the waters, and so forth. And we can make a conscious effort to do our part to not negatively impact the things that are around us. Number 2 there, it says, even though humans are the dominant and most intelligent species on the planet, we must rely on the Earth's resources for our existence. No, we can't do it on our own. Can anybody pull a grape or a banana or a potato out of thin air? Even if you did, right? Yeah, that's right. It used to grow in our ears. Mom used to tell you to clean your ears. You're going to grow potatoes in your ears, I'm thinking, man, those would be some pasty potatoes. I hope we don't make no fries with those. But, we can't. Even if we drew it out of thin air, it's coming from a resource. The air is a resource. There's microorganisms in the resource. We can't do these things on our own. So we have to protect them. We have to guard them. And, of course, we have to educate ourselves as to why they're important. Now, remember we covered about resources on page 175 real quick. Under the worth of our planet, second paragraph, it says, resources are natural materials that our Earth provides. Each resource has benefits used to either sustain or improve the quality of our lives. And this is why we have to take care of them. And these things are for our existence. On page 174 here, if you look at that box and think about it, it says, even though humans are the dominant and most intelligent species on this planet, we must rely on the Earth's resources for our existence. If we misuse or contaminate our resources, then not only will we be affected, but future generations will also suffer from our failure to respect and appreciate our environment. Now, there's 2 ways that people can fail. They can fail through ignorance, or they can fail through rejecting knowledge, rejecting the facts. People sometimes have been presented with facts and they ignore them and they reject them and they go on down a path of destruction and they fail. Well, it's up to us to do our part. We can't go and change everybody's minds, but remember what we're learning here. We can do our part to make a difference. We can start to educate ourselves. We can educate others. We can be an advocate to others. We don't have time, but hopefully, possibly next time we'll get into that definition there of go look up the word, what it means to be an activist for, right? An advocate for, to defend the cause of another. Right now, what we're defending is the cause of what's taking place in our environment as a result of the actions and the choices of mankind. Well, we've also got to defend mankind too, and I'm not talking about going to court and defending them, right? But one of the best ways that we can defend them and help them to improve their quality of life is to give them an education in positive moral character development. And of course, that's what you're doing, and what you're doing is going to make a huge impact and change society over time. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, one small step. So we're going to stop right there on point number 2. There's a little bit more to go into that point, and what I have learned. And we'll pick up tomorrow, next class, I'm already excited, which will be October 29th, 2023, 5:30 Central Standard Time. And I would recommend, just in case, of course, the rest of this might take the rest of the class, but bring your responsibility units with you, just in case the teacher finishes what I have learned and moves and transitions onto the responsibility unit. And our next teacher will be Chris. Thank you all for joining and attending, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next time.